Mahmood, the CEO of PNB Merdeka Ventures. Our distinguished speakers, Mr. Shiv Shankar, CEO of Real Estate Agency, Rahim & Co. International, and Mr. James Goh, Head of Investments, Rahim & Co. International. A special mention also to our chairman, Mr. Abra Anwar, who is tuning in today as in the audience. And ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to everyone here in Malaysia, and a very good morning to all of you tuning in and joining us from the UK. A warm welcome to the BMCC webinar team, Malaysian Property Market Update, and an introduction to Merdeka 118 Tower, Kuala Lumpur's new global icon. This webinar, we are pleased and proud to say, is organized in partnership with PNB Merdeka Ventures and Rahim & Co., a fellow member of the BMCC. I'm Jennifer, the Executive Director of the British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to all our partners in the UK, the British Chambers of Commerce Network and the British Malaysian Society for helping us to promote the webinar in the United Kingdom. So welcome everyone. It's good to see everyone again. So the impact of the COVID pandemic has created various challenges for all of us, of which ongoing business barriers remains the chief consideration for all of us. Restricted movements of trade, travel bans, caution investment decisions from the global MNCs to everyday consumers are several of these instances we are facing today. However, for every challenges also comes an opportunity. We have discovered new ways of maintaining operations and doing business. The great dependency on technology has increased innovations to adapt and force a new mindset in how we do business on efficiency and what is required today. We have seen digital communications and engagements become a vital tool for business to rebuild, network, and share insights in this new norm. As we would see in today's presentations, as our speakers share about Merdeka 118 Tower, a landmark development in Malaysia, set to be the tallest tower in Malaysia and also in Southeast Asia. And if I'm not mistaken, this will be the largest building in the world when it's up and running, right? Our speakers will be able to validate that later. At the Chamber, we hope to embrace and contribute to this growing opportunity despite for all the challenges that we face today in these uncertain times for the benefit of members and business communities. The adaptive nature of the BMCC makes us well positioned to create various platforms, especially working with our members, such as this forum, as I mentioned earlier, working with our member Rahim & Co., and to resurface business prospects in Malaysia. On that note, I would like to thank our partners for this webinar, PNB Merdeka Ventures and Rahim & Co. for this collaboration, especially Tengku for being here today to share a few words and to support us. So may I now invite Tengku Dato Abdul Aziz to say a few words.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and a very good evening to everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event and also everyone for taking the time to join us, both PNB Merdeka Ventures and Rahim & Co. in our webinar session for an exclusive preview to the Merdeka 118 development. I am truly delighted to see such a great turnout into this webinar. It is an honor to be able to welcome you all, even though it's virtually. UK and Malaysia has shared a very long history of diplomatic ties and successful trade relations. Within the ASEAN region, we are happy to note that Malaysia is UK's second largest trading partner. And given the long history of fostering relations and sharing of information with the United Kingdom, we hope with the help and support from the MCC Malaysia, we may continue to do that with important updates such as this webinar, bringing our business communities together for this purpose. As some of you may already know, PNB, our holding company, through its subsidiary companies, SB Setia and Sandabi Property, have invested significantly in the regeneration project namely the Battersea Power Station in central London. I'm sure you're all familiar with the historic Battersea Power Station. And this project is being managed by the London-based Battersea Power Station Development Company Limited. PNB has other direct real estate developments within the City of London, namely Aviation House, One Exchange Square, and PNB House. Quite similar to the Battersea Power Station, which is a listed building, the Merdeka 118 development is also listed and located in Malaysia's most historical site. The site where our Declaration of Independence took place about 63 years ago. Merdeka 118 landmark address coexists in an area which is rich in history, where the centerpiece is Stadium Merdeka, or Independence Stadium. In terms of the similarity between Battersea and our site, which is the Merdeka 118, both have got 20 acres of land. The Battersea Power Station has got an iconic landmark in London with four chimneys. And in our case, we have two historic stadiums, which is Stadium Merdeka and Stadium Negara. And significantly also, the Battersea has got will be getting a new underground station, which is the Battersea Station, which is an extension of the Northern Line. In our case, also we have a Merdeka Station underground, which is the MRT station, which has been completed and up and running. We don't have River Thames though. So as we continue to develop the Merdeka 118 precinct as an integrated mixed development project comprising the 118-story tower, a retail mall, and residential towers, both Stadium Negara and Stadium Merdeka will remain as national heritage sites. It is our hope that having the old and the new together within the precinct would transform Merdeka 118 within the next 2 years, by 2022, into a must-visit destination whenever you are in Kuala Lumpur. You may have seen that the tower is taking shape from different parts of KL, and we are happy to update you that our structural concrete core has reached its peak at level 118 in early September this year. So which means we are already the tallest structure in Kuala Lumpur as of today. So we hope in today's engagement session on Merdeka 118 will prove to be informative and an exciting opportunity for everyone to help create awareness, especially among the British business community of this landmark development. I will not take up too much of your time. And shortly, Rahim and Co will give more details on Merdeka's 118 distinctive features. On behalf of PNB Merdeka Ventures, we hope that you will use this opportunity to learn more about the development. And thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Jennifer.
Jennifer, you have to unmute.
Thanks, Siva. What I was saying is that thank you, Tengku, so much for sharing about, giving us some updates and insights about the Merdeka 118. It's such a beautiful site especially when you drive through KL, you can see it and you're always like, it's a nice photo or Instagram. If you're able to stop and take a photo of the building, it's already up. You can see the towers up and there with the lights all on. So thank you so much. And interesting to note about the similarities between the Battersea development and the Merdeka 118. Thank you, Tengku. So before I pass the session to James, just some housekeeping rules to our audience. If you have any questions for our speakers today, kindly send them through the Q&A function that's available on your screens. Please avoid using the chat functions because the speakers and myself, we will be looking at the Q&A function. And we will, as always, we will attempt to address all your questions submitted if the time permits. So with that, may I pass to James for your presentation?
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you to everyone who's joining us today. We at Rahim & Co are indeed very proud to be associated with this, this very prestigious and historic project, really. So just a bit of background as to our role. Rahim & Co as property consultants, we are the joint exclusive leasing agents for the office tower. And we've been working with PNB now for a number of years on the marketing and the awareness raising efforts for this building. So thank you, everyone. I'll jump into it then. Right, so as Tengku mentioned just now, this site has immense historical significance for Malaysia, for Malaysians, being the site where independence was declared for Malaysia back in 1957. Since then, it's been a rather, quiet corner of the city. We are located quite close to the downtown core, but for most of the last few decades, development has tended to focus further to the north of this site. So this is an integrated development, world-class integrated development with superb connectivity that is poised to elevate this sleepy corner of town to the global stage. It comprises various components, which I will talk about briefly. So this slide basically shows the various Kuala Lumpur landmarks or icons that have come to personify our city on the world stage. The most recent, of course, being the Petronas Twin Towers, which I think everyone will associate with Malaysia. So in 2022, upon completion, we hope that Merdeka 118 will become our new global icon. So besides the striking good looks of this building, the best thing this project has to offer is its location, as I mentioned, positioned as it is on the outer rim of the inner city. It is therefore undoubtedly an urban location, but without all the traffic headaches and congestion of the inner city. In fact, in my opinion, this is probably the best connected major development in KL, next to KL Central, which is the transport hub. It's connected to all three intercity rail services, including Maharaja monorail station at its doorstep, Hang Tuah and Pasar Seni LRT stations within a short walk, and its own dedicated Merdeka MRT station, which is only 2 stops away from KL Central. And from there, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away to KLIA via the KLIA Express. So the property is, the building is accessed via multiple directions, from the north, from the city center and the north via Jalan Hang Tuah, from the east via Jalan Lokyu, from the west via Jalan Maharaja Lela, and from the south through a dedicated tunnel linking the property, linking the project directly to the federal highway. And these are the approximate travel times from to and from Merdeka 118 from various KL city landmarks. PNB Merdeka Ventures is pouring significant amounts of money into new infrastructure upgrades to ensure that this project, or this Merdeka 118, will be easily accessible. I think most significantly will be the direct connection or tunnel that will link the project directly to the federal highway. So essentially, you can come off the federal highway into a dedicated tunnel, which will bring you straight into basements 4 and 5 of the project. I mentioned earlier that this was, up until now, a rather sleepy, a quiet corner of KL. I think many of you who are from Malaysia or who have lived in Malaysia will be quite familiar with this location. But for those of you tuning in from overseas, Petaling Street, which is just next to where this project is located, is a well-known tourist destination, very popular with backpackers and tourists. Has a lot of historical significance as being Kuala Lumpur's Chinatown. This area has been enjoying a bit of a revival in recent years. It's fast becoming a destination for young professionals and hipsters, with lots of new and trendy bars and cafes opening up in the area. So it's becoming quite a popular destination for the younger set. So these are essentially the components of Merdeka 118. So you have the office tower itself, the Park Hyatt Kuala Lumpur, which will take up the top floors of the building. And it will be surrounded by 3 luxury apartment towers, housing over 800 luxury apartment units. A mall at the bottom, 7th-floor mall at the bottom, and on the east wing, ballroom and conference facilities. Oops, sorry, just bear with me for a second. So we zoom into the office tower itself. Think of it as 3 buildings stacked on top of one another. So there's the low zone that goes from the 8th to the 39th floor, the mid zone from the 43rd to the 74th, and the high zone from the 78th to the 96th. So if, let's say, you wanted to get to the mid zone, you'd have to come into the reception area and take a floor up to the sky lobby on level 40, and from there you'll take another lift to your destination floor within the mid zone. All right, and this is the drop-off to the main drop-off to the office tower. On the left there, where that black Lamborghini is sitting, that's where you'll be dropped off to enter to the office tower. Whereas on the right, where the red car is, that's the drop off to the hotel. As you walk in, you'll be greeted by this sight, a 29-meter high water feature that runs from floor to ceiling. That's essentially the same height as a 10-story building. You'll make your way up to the reception level on the 4th floor. And this is where you'll pick up your access card just before you pass through the turnstiles to the lift lobby. You'll take the lift up to your respective transfer floor. So these transfer floors will essentially function as lobbies for each zone, and will have meeting facilities as well as cafes, and will essentially function as a lobby for each zone. They will also function as assembly areas in the case of any emergencies. Okay, and the typical office floor will have 3-meter floor to ceiling, will have a height of 3 meters, and in line with the building's triple green rating, each floor will be served by 4 air conditioning AHUs via underfloor diffusers, which is something quite unique in KL, and which are more efficient than your typical ceiling variety aircon. Low emission glass will cut out glare from the outside and keep the space cool, while ensuring that there's abundant natural light filtering through the entire floor. Raised flooring will allow for flexibility in the workplace design without the need for any bothersome hacking. So this is what this is a bird's eye view of the entry point, the first floor. I mentioned just now, if you look up at the top of this diagram on the right, that will be where that black Lamborghini was parked. So you would essentially enter through those doors and make your way up from this view, the right-hand side. You make your way up the escalators on the right, up to the 4th floor, where you will get your access card from the reception and pass through the turnstiles before entering the lift lobby. Now, this is what a typical floor looks like in the low zone. It's actually 4 fairly rectangular spaces surrounding a central core. So it's actually quite an efficient layout. It has those pointy bits there are what give the building its multifaceted facade. And each floor on the low zone is almost 20,000 square feet. And actually, the floors get bigger progressively as you go higher. So the mid zone, slightly different configuration, slightly more floor area. And the high zone, again, a slightly different configuration with a slightly more floor area. In line with the building's drive to be the most sophisticated building in Malaysia, it will be triple green rated to offer maximum comfort with minimal impact on the environment. Some of the features include 100% rainwater harvesting, a district cooling plant with chilled water energy storage. And to encourage people to bike to work, it will have 500 bicycle parking bays, as well as showers for commuters who wish to ride a bike to work. Every effort was undertaken to ensure the sustainable construction of this building, including robust waste management and the widespread use of recycled building materials. For a building this tall, of course, the first priority for everyone really would be fire safety. Now, this building has been built to National Fire Protection Association standards, which is an American organization dedicated to setting very high and robust standards in fire protection. Each floor is fire rated for about 3 hours. So if there's an incident on your floor will be evacuated, as well as the floor directly above and below you. And you will go down to your nearest sky lobby to wait it out. If the situation escalates, you will then make your way down to the linear park at the bottom of the building. In terms of power supply and in line with the building's Tier 1 MSC status, the building will feature dual power supply from its primary substation at Menara Warisan, and as well as a backup secondary supply from the substation at Jalan Galloway. In terms of air conditioning, I mentioned earlier, it will feature underfloor air conditioning, which is a rarity in KL. And as far as lifts are concerned, it will feature an intelligent lift system to maximize efficient vertical transportation within this super tall skyscraper. And of course, as a Tier 1 Malaysia cyber center, you can expect nothing less than state-of-the-art IT infrastructure together with 3 telco providers. So in addition to the office building, there are various amenities available, including the 2 heritage stadiums that Tengku mentioned earlier. These 2 heritage stadiums will be restored to their former glory and will continue to be used as a venue for concerts and other live events. Right on top of the office tower will be the Park Hyatt Hotel, which is slated to be the most luxurious and grandest hotel that we will have in Kuala Lumpur. There will be a 1 million square foot retail mall attached to the office building. Spread over seven levels. And of course, for a building this tall, you know, what's the point if you're not going to take advantage of the fantastic views? So the top 4 floors of the office tower will be dedicated to will be open to the public so that they can enjoy the view. For the more adventurous among you, there's the skywalk, where you can actually walk around the perimeter of the building on the outside. And finally, we have the linear park, which runs from the base of the building to Maharaja Lela Station. And this park also features as this was also the congregation area in cases of emergency. Some of the consultants working on this project, some of the best that Malaysia has to offer. And this is a rough timeline for the completion of this building. So we're looking at actually completing, as Tengku mentioned earlier, the core of the building has reached the 118th level. The office building is set to complete in 2022. And we expect office tenants to move in by the 2nd or 3rd quarter of 2022. The residential towers will be last completing in 2024. And that is a view as of about a month ago, the end of August 2020. Yeah, some more. So you can see the views that it will have of KL. This is probably the only spot in KL where you will actually tower over the Petronas Twin Towers, as well as the KL Tower, as well as Exchange 106. Well, with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Can I hand it back to you, Jennifer?
Yes, thanks, James. You already have a couple of questions for you, but we will hold on to that and get Siva to start on his presentation on the property landscape. And then we do all the questions at the end of the session presentations.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll start my presentation now. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this little sharing session that we're doing. We've reverted to doing the webinar because it's still not safe out there to have events. So I'm sure this webinar will prove useful to you. You've heard James talk about the building, talk about Merdeka 118 for the last 15 or 20 minutes. I will now share with you for the next 15 minutes or so about the market condition. You know, there's a lot of upheaval in the real estate market, just like there is in every economic sector, because largely due to the COVID situation. So this paper will try and delve into what that is and see if we can find some solutions on how we can look beyond the COVID. This slide shows you, if you look at this slide shows you in a snapshot the real estate, the state of the real estate market from 2011. And you will see that the markets has been on a steady down decline from 2012 onwards, and it kept going right up to 2017. 2016 and 17 saw the worst declines, and then in 2018 it got slightly better, and we actually recorded positives for 2018 and 2019. And what was expected to be improvements in 2020 unfortunately did not materialize because of COVID. So if you analyze 2018 and 2019, you will see that 2019 showed an improvement both in terms of value as well as in terms of volume of transactions. It expanded by 4.8% on volume and slightly less than 1% on value, which is pretty good because before that we were on negative territory. But unfortunately, if you compare now the first half of 2018 and 2019 and the first half of 2020, you will see a whopping drop of close to 30%, slightly less than 30% in terms of transactions. What that essentially means is that the real estate market in Malaysia contracted by close to 30%. In terms of value, it went down by slightly more than 31%. So this is a huge drop in any given market. We've never had this kind of drop. Not since the 1997, 1998 global financial crisis have we seen this kind of drops. But that's just for the first half. The first quarter actually showed an improvement, and then COVID hit, and then it went really down, dragging every sector of the market with it. If you look at, this is for information, if you look at the property market in a snapshot, you will see that one of the biggest problems we have is we are overly dependent on residential, which forms close to 63-64% of the entire real estate market. And this, I think, for anybody, for any economy, is not very healthy. The reliance on residential properties as investments may not be as healthy as we think it is. We need to expand to other sectors, but we will cover that in a minute. If you look at all the subsectors, unfortunately, in the first half of 2020, every subsector recorded a negative, which ranged from a low 24 to a high 37. So every sector, the residential, commercial, industrial, agriculture, every sector saw a negative, which is very unfortunate for the Malaysian property market. In terms of value, you also saw every sector record negative. Retail market supply. If you look at retail market supply, there is a total of 177 million square feet of retail space in Malaysia, with an additional 21 million coming on stream. However, we are lucky because we still have about 80% occupancy in the retail market. The retail market also suffered for the first half of the year, but ever since June, we've had reports coming from most retail players that footfalls have been increasing and their retail sales has been increasing. Unfortunately, the last few days, or perhaps the last 1 week, that's gone back into no footfalls in the malls, simply because of the COVID's re-emergence of a new COVID scare. This is the office space supply. You will see again, we have a 25 million square feet incoming office supply in Malaysia. Most of it centered around Kuala Lumpur and Selangor. We have we have about 80% occupancy for now, but as this new supply comes into the market, it is widely envisaged that this 80% occupancy levels may drop a little bit in the future. So let's look at the big picture now. What's in store for the market? Based on all those transactions, based on all that data, it's very difficult to crunch numbers now because the COVID is a huge unknown. So it's not easy to make predictions, but we will try. So what's happened to the market? The market has been spooked. It's been spooked very, very badly in the last 6 months. Jobs have been lost, profits are down, many people are unable to meet expenses. Things look really bad for the economy. Oversupply situation in almost every sector, and the biggest oversupply seems to be in residential and the serviced apartments, and to some extent the office space. This oversupply is expected to get worse as demand dries up. As the market contracts and people go into hiding, investments are going to slow and demand will become less. Overhang situation is quite dire in the residential and serviced apartment sector. At the last count, or at the end of last year, there was 54,000 units that were in an overhang situation. And overhang is defined as a brand new property which is unsold 9 months after completion. But if you add on, there's another 35,000 units which are currently under construction. And then I think there are probably about 100,000 units which were already bought previously, but are going to be put back into the market either for rent or for sale by the individual purchasers. When you take all that into consideration, you find that your overhang situation is quite severe. Office supply is also office space is also oversupplied, and as I showed you earlier, you have more supply incoming, so that is expected to make the situation worse. Take-up rates cannot match incoming supply. This is a given. We are building far quicker and far more than the market is able to absorb. So we will see an oversupply situation in many sectors of the real estate market. Second and third tier retail malls are in danger of emptying. We can also already see that now. Some of the second and third tier malls are either half empty or 1/3 empty. And when you go in there, there's hardly anybody in there. What will happen is there's a danger that retailers will close shop, fueled on by the COVID scare, and these malls will slowly empty. So what will happen post-COVID? What will happen? Huge oversupply, like I mentioned, huge oversupply in every sector. Overhang situation, office space. There is a silver lining though, right? After COVID, there is a silver lining. Every cloud will have a little bit of a silver lining. The World Bank has said that although Malaysia's economic outlook seems uncertain, we first quarter contracted by 4.6%, export of goods declined, the entire economy, they said the economy will contract 3.1, but the second quarter contracted by 17.1. But their prediction is 2021, we will bounce back with a growth of 6.9. So that's something for us to look forward to. And the IMF actually said that Malaysia will bounce back by 9%, and we will be fastest among Asian economies. Now, assuming you think 9% is too much and 6.9% is maybe a bit more realistic or maybe a bit optimistic, I think even if we grew by 5 or 5.5% in 2021, it will be a very great achievement for Malaysia already. We need to do a few things. We need to understand that the real estate market is in a bit of doldrums and it needs help. So we need to do a few things to mitigate this. Number one, I think most importantly, we need to understand the virus, that this virus is a worse economic problem than it is a medical problem. It's turned into a worse economic problem, not just for Malaysia, but for the whole world. To mitigate the situation, the government recently initiated the home ownership campaign, which will run from the 1st of June to the end of May next year under Penjana. This is a very good initiative. The previous home ownership campaign for 2019 had a fantastic take-up rate. We do not expect the new home ownership campaign to be as successful as the old one, but even if it was half as successful or 2/3 as successful, it would still have done a lot to stimulate the real estate market. The 6-month moratorium from the banks has probably saved a lot of people and averted a big NPL scenario. Now, this has ended at the end of September. So we're technically now in a non-moratorium scenario, but the banks have actually taken into consideration this, the need to extend it, and it's now being extended on a needs-based basis, which is fine, which is fantastic. So those who do not need that aid can go ahead and start paying for their loans, and those who have been affected or impacted by COVID can apply for some form of assistance from the bank to extend the moratorium. The 70% loan to value ratio for financing for the third property onwards, which has been enforced for a few years now, is now removed for residential properties. So this should now spur or motivate investors who have multiple properties to maybe invest in their third and fourth and fifth property, because they'll get a much higher loan now. Stamp duty exemptions have also been introduced, and this is perfect because a buyer would be able to save thousands of dollars in stamp duty. Real property gains tax has also been exempted for residential properties only from 1st June 2020 right up to 31st December 2021, which is great. So if you're an investor and you're looking to sell a property, you could do that now very quickly and save quite a lot of money on property gains tax, which you do not have to pay. There are rebates we need to give. Perhaps we need to consider giving rebates, discounts, and we need to reduce compliance cost on developments, because compliance cost is a huge portion of developments, and these things tend to add on to the final selling price of the property. Perhaps it's time to bring the DIBS back in a more compliant form, which means it's not a blanket DIBS. DIBS stands for Developer Interest Bearing Scheme, where the developer paid interest on your loan for the first 2 or 3 years while the building was under construction. I think it's time to perhaps consider a variant of this to be brought back in a more compliant form. We need to relax foreign purchase criteria. We have, from the last count, I think there was a statement recently at one of the property conferences where it was estimated that less than 5% of Malaysian properties are foreign investment owned. So perhaps we need to relax these criteria and allow more foreigners to come and buy Malaysian properties. Then perhaps some of this overhang could be mopped up. Banks need to be more friendly. I think we have a situation where we have 54 or 58% of loans not being approved for whatever reason, or maybe the quantum of the loan being approved was not acceptable to the buyer. Perhaps it's time for the banks to be a little bit more loan friendly as well as repayment friendly. Developers, on the other hand, need to slow down the launches in response to this oversupply. We know there is a huge oversupply situation. So I think what we need to do is we need to slow things down a bit, let the market recover over the next 2, 3, and 4 years, and then we can step up the launches again. Some of the Penjana initiatives, I mentioned it just now. So the reintroduction of the HOC, the stamp duty exemption, we got 100% stamp duty exemption on the loan agreement. We got discounts by developers. Some developers are giving 10%, some will give you more. So it's a great opportunity now to go and try and buy properties. You get a discount almost immediately. The RPGT exemptions. So these were some of the things that have been introduced by the government so that we can stimulate the property market. Just like every other industry, the real estate market is now being inundated with industry disruptors. We don't know what these disruptors will do to the market. Things like transport-oriented developments have become very popular in the last few years, and what this has done essentially is I'm sorry, I apologize. What this has done is it has made non-transport oriented developments very difficult to sell. So if you are a developer or if you are a buyer of one of these developments which didn't have a transit station nearby, then you have now become slightly disadvantaged. Co-working spaces and serviced office are disrupting regular traditional office space. Co-living spaces are disrupting the rental spaces of condos and apartments. The Airbnb has severely disrupted hotels, although I think the Airbnb industry is going to suffer quite badly because of COVID. I cannot see your average user going into an Airbnb space where you would be a little unsure of sanitization and cleanliness. The young millennials prefer to rent instead of buy. So if everybody is going to rent, who's going to buy these properties? We've got the nomad mindset now. We don't mind moving from one house to the other, one apartment to the other every 1 or 2 years, as opposed to previously the older generation who probably lived in the same house virtually all their lives. And millennial purchasers, they think differently from older purchasers, and they are the biggest growth group now. So the millennial purchasers are going to influence how property is purchased and therefore how property is sold. The e-commerce industry, of course, has seen a big boom in the last 3 to 4 months, but what it has done, it has disrupted other industries quite badly. So are we in for a bad time? I think there are more answers than questions. There are more questions than answers. So let's look at it a little bit. Malaysia Baru, we had Malaysia Baru feel good factor, and the new government came in and started cleaning house. There was a positive feel everywhere, and the property market saw a bit of a boom. Investor confidence returned, and we expected the economy to remain reasonably good for the next 2 or 3 years. 2018 and 2019 was good, like I showed you just now, showed a lot of promising improvement. Then all hell broke loose, right? COVID-19, there were 3 black swan events, COVID-19 being the first black swan. The current political uncertainty is another black swan. And the oil and gas crunch was another black swan. Now, all these 3 things joined together and formed what I think was the perfect storm. So as it stands today, no property analyst will be brave enough to give you a good prediction. However, what I think we need to do is we need to rely less on residential and offer better alternative asset class investments, and therefore we can grow the pie and make the property market a little bit more stable. I believe that commercial properties will become more popular. I think people will start learning how to move further and further away from Kuala Lumpur and the main cities in Malaysia and go into satellite suburbs because it's cheaper out there and we have no choice, right? My strongest opinion is that although things look bad now, it won't be like this forever. Everything is a cycle. And I think this will pass, and I think we will see some recovery. When we will see recovery, I believe we will see a small positive in 2021 and 2022, and hopefully we will see a bigger positive in 2023. But this will all be very reliant on the creation of a vaccine. I think the property market, just like every other economic sector, will depend on the creation of a vaccine, and that alone will propel the market forwards. But I think the days of high growth for Malaysia are over. We have to understand that any growth is going to be slow and steady and gradual, and will take a long time. So property is a long-term play anyway. So I think we will see good growth over the next 5 years, very gradual and slow. With that, thank you very much, Jennifer. Back to you.
Thank you, Siva. Definitely, there's so much more questions in the minds of everyone, I'm sure, than answers. I'm sure you can't answer. You can't be a property analyst to answer, but you have actually given us a scenario of the current market conditions and the industry disruptors. So before we go to the questions on Merdeka 118 itself, let's take a question on the property market itself. For Siva, since you just presented about the situation, and then also interestingly about the latest trends and industry disruptions. But there's a Tony Colin Rich says he fully accepts there's a dire strait of oversupply in the residential sector, but it's amazing that he's seeing, at least from the untrained eye, developers are still launching. The residential construction is still taking place in KL. So what is driving these developers to build so much new stock, even though you mentioned there's oversupply and there would be overhang situations considering this current situation? Then to add on to that question, this is a question that I'm thinking, I'm sure many, how has all these situations impacted, or I'm sure the developers, the PNB and yourselves too, has taken into consideration in terms of how the plans are going to come in play for Merdeka 118. That's going to be a 1 million shopping complex, retail space, 1 million square feet retail space, and how has this disruption affected your plans?
Okay. Let me answer the first question about why there are still so much of construction going on. You see, unfortunately for us, the gestation period between wanting to build something and eventually building something is very long. By the time the developer buys the sale of the land is completed, he applies for all the permits, and he applies for approval to build whatever he wants. It could take between 2 and 4 years. So when you first started your project, the market may still have been very, very strong. By the time you come to a point where you're trying to build it or trying to sell it, the market may have weakened, but you're already committed. You've put millions of dollars into your project and you're committed, so you may have no choice but to proceed and hope for the best. That could be one reason. The other reason, of course, is it's human nature. Everybody believes that their project is slightly different from others. They have a project differentiation. Theirs is superior, and therefore will receive a much better response even in a slow market. So that's just human nature everywhere. The second question on how all this has impacted us, or how it will impact Merdeka 118, we won't lie. It has impacted us, and it will, just like how every other sector is being impacted. But here's the thing. There's office space in KL and Selangor have slightly less than 80% occupancy. That's actually amazing occupancy rates in a bad market. If you really analyze it, you will find that a lot of that 80%, a lot of that vacancy comes from older buildings. So what's happening now? Malaysians don't have a culture of maintaining. They don't have a culture of upgrade, refurbish, and maintain. So some of the older buildings, they age, they become bad, and tenants from these older buildings then move to newer buildings as new buildings come available. So on average, it's 80%, but many of the new buildings have close to 100%. If you look at Bangsa South, you look at Mid Valley, you look at KL Central, you look at all these new developments, they have 90, 95, or maybe even 100% in some cases. So we are, because Merdeka 118 is a building onto itself, and it's an icon and it's different. We truly have product differentiation. And we believe that, yes, it will be a challenge, but we will attract the cream of the crop, the bigger companies, the bigger multinationals, the global leaders who will be prepared to spend a bit more on their rents to have those facilities and that address.
Okay. Thank you. That actually comes out nicely when you said your aim is to attract global leaders, global market, global brands, and all. So this comes to a question by Suresh, one of our audience here, saying, who are the prospect tenants who have expressed interest, especially from the international brands? Maybe James, you want to take on? You came on when you were presenting this question.
James, you have to unmute.
All right. Okay. So Suresh, I believe you actually have two questions. Well, I'll answer both with one answer. We obviously cannot name names as to who has expressed interest. All that is confidential at this point. What I can tell you is that we are talking to some multinationals. We are talking to people we're talking to companies in the financial sector, management consultancy, of course, co-working space, and finance. So these are the kind of tenants that we are talking to at this point.
Okay. So we have a question from Phoebe on co-working space. I guess you are already tackling this issue on co-working space and looking at the prospective, organizations that offer co-working space as one of your tenants also. So that rightfully answers this. There's a question from one of the audience, right?
Yeah, you mentioned co-working space, Phoebe. I think your question was, will it affect the building, this trend towards co-working space? No, in fact, it complements Merdeka 118 very well. I think now there's definitely this trend towards co-working spaces. In fact, a lot of our corporate clients that we have been dealing with of late, since post MCO, have said that many of them are now looking towards working in co-working spaces, or at least, perhaps working on a smaller project, more flexible basis, taking up space in co-working spaces. And it's become very, this is a trend that's only going to gain ground. So Merdeka 118 is in talks with various co-working operators to provide for this trend. And if anything, I imagine that the co-working spaces, because of increased demand, because of the pandemic, will now want to take up even more space within Merdeka 118. By doing so, that only adds to the attraction of Merdeka 118 to traditional office tenants who would value a co-working space within the same building as them.
Thank you, James. I realize that we have reached the 5 p.m. mark, but there's actually two questions I think it's quite important to answer. One is very quickly, maybe James or Siva, you can share, even Tengku. One is the differentiation factor. I'm sure you have asked this question many times with the TRX exchange. What is the differentiation between Merdeka 118? You mentioned about iconic, historical, but in terms of what you can offer, especially the international investor. Number two is for James, I guess that will be on the environment side. Then Dato Faiz asked about innovative on renewable and innovative efforts that's been taken for renewable energy, on the green side, but you have the three certifications you mentioned just now. So perhaps some comments on that before we end.
Okay, Jennifer, maybe I take that question. I answered the second part first, which is on energy, the power, things that we innovate in order to reduce power within the building. One is that we are using an optimized energy performance system by having a ducted cooling plant within the site. And we have daylight sensors within the tower, and also sub-metering of chip water systems. And as far as the lighting system is 100% LED, so that itself will give a lot of savings in power. And another point that with regards to power is that for the lifts, we have 87 lifts within the tower. And this lift, we have regenerative drives. So it means that as the lifts go up and down, you produce electricity and it is fed into the system as well. So, and maybe one other item that we can highlight is that within the hotel, which is on the upper floors of the tower, we have solar panels at the rooftop of the tower. And this would supply the hot water system within the hotel. So combined together, there will be quite a substantial savings in energy. I think that's where the platinum rating comes in. Yeah. And as far as the highlights of the tower is that it's been designed for a 20,000 square feet floor area, each floor. And you can divide up to 5,000 square feet each. So you can have like 4 tenancies per floor. And each of these floor has got raised floor, which means that you don't have to worry about cablings everywhere. It is now below within that raised floor. And at the same time, gives a lot of flexibility for the tenants to do whatever renovation and so on. And I think one idea that we have implemented also is that we are using an underfloor air conditioning system, which means gives you maximum flexibility in your layout planning. So I think those are certain characteristics that would also have to reduce costs in fitting out because things are more flexible. Yeah, I think that probably some of the differentiation, if you like.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good answers. Thank you so much. Can I just ask Siva and James, do you have some last words before we end the webinar? Anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who participated. I think there were slightly about 50 plus people who participated. So thank you very much. You can call us anytime. You can call James or me, or you can email us through, you can get our contacts through the British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce. And we would be happy to meet each one of you in person, individually, if need be, and give you a much better presentation on the building. And if you have any property needs at all, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help.
Thank you, Siva. James,
Yeah, if I may just add to that, we do have a show gallery where we can give you a personalized tour of the, well, basically a personalized presentation to the project. It has a very beautiful scale model. So if there are any corporate tenants out there who would be interested in knowing more, as Siva says, please reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much once again to our speakers. Thank you for this collaboration. To all our audience, we hope that you found the sessions insightful, the views, especially on the property market, helpful. We all know it's challenging times. As Siva mentioned, there's definitely a silver lining in every cloud. So it will come. It is a cycle. So with that, you know, we wish everyone the best. If you require any further information or support, please do reach out to me or my colleagues at the BMCC. We're also happy to channel any questions to our speakers today. And while this webinar is recorded, so it will be made available on our YouTube channel. So we will be happy for those who have, you know, registered and unable to join. We will also forward them just for the speakers' benefit. Okay, before we end, for BMCC members, there will be a town hall with our chairman this Friday. If you have not registered, kindly do so. So with that, thank you again, everyone. Until the next time, please stay connected with us. Stay safe. Have a great evening and a great day for those of you in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.